The agenda this week examined how the Canadian tech sector responded to the U.S. travel ban, got down to earth with astronaut Roberta Bondar, explored ways to get more women into science, and changing views of Black masculinity. The agenda's week in review begins debating the case of Toronto versus everybody.
Dalton McGuinty's government, we're going back from before Kathleen Wynne became premier, did acknowledge that the City of Toronto was becoming a more mature political unit and therefore ought to have more powers to do its own thing. And they passed a quote-unquote City of Toronto Act, giving the city the right to do more things than it could in the past. Why don't they update that act? Why don't they just let Toronto do more things?
I think they should. I think they should. But the challenge, too, and if you talk to provincial officials who've been involved in this debate over many, many years, is that every time you want to have that conversation, the city's historical practice has been whine, they want more.
Historical or hysterical?
Both, actually, both. So, unfortunately, there's a history that has caused, I think, many in the provincial government to be a little leery of let's just hand the keys to the City of Toronto. But I think I think the government needs to try again. As I said, our government tried with the good old infamous who does what thing to try and have that kind of conversation. I think they should try it again. I suspect, though, that this is not the year to do it when you've got, a provincial government and the mayor, elections on the horizon. But perhaps the first thing they should do, whoever ends up, in the government at any level, is try to do it again when you've got a bit of a 4-year runway to try and sort out, because it's messy. Trust me, it's very, very messy. But it's a very necessary conversation, because the other thing, and Martha made this point, this city is the economic driver of this province and this country. And if we don't get it right, we are all in big, big trouble.
Oh man, you realized by just articulating out loud what you just said, that everybody who lives outside the city
will hate me.
Absolutely.
Yes,
we're good with that.
And I say that like, I live in Ajax. I live in 905. I ran in 905. Trust me, I understand that tension and that dynamic. But the facts, not alternative facts, the facts are the facts. Toronto is driving the economy of this country, and we need to get it right.
Does the capital city of Ontario need more powers to do its thing?
It does, but we're setting aside the fact we had a deal, we had a solution. We had something that was going to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars. It was nixed for political reasons. So it's not entirely a power issue or a constitutional issue.
Darn those politics.
I mean, I'll take it even further. I am a believer in the city-state. Now, I'm not one of those people who thinks we should be a province, but I do believe that cities around the world are becoming more important than countries. And when you travel and somebody says, where are you from? Do you say you're from Toronto or from Canada? Quite often, I would assert most people say they're from a certain city, and that's why those cities need power to run themselves and to be autonomous.
Well, actually, if the mayor should be careful, because if I were the premier and the mayor were to say, I want to be a city-state or a city-province, I'd say, cool, you can pay for health care. But
I'm not sure that's what he had in mind.
No, I know. Yeah. I don't think so. Be careful what you wish for.
They already offloaded a lot.
Well, they also downloaded a lot of revenue, too. Let's be clear on that one.
And uploaded education.
Yeah, But what is interesting on this economic piece is because something really cool has happened in this town in the last couple of weeks. All of the regions, with support from the province and the support from the feds, have built a new regional economic development agency called Toronto Global, the brand Toronto Global.
And the province funded it.
And the province and the feds and five of the regions, city, everybody's in. And it's kind of exciting because it's never happened before. Many folks have tried to make this happen. It never worked, but talking about the stars are aligning.
What's the significance of it?
Well, because all of the municipalities, the province and the feds, are recognizing that Toronto is a region that is an economic driver, and it's also recognizing that while we have great strengths in this region, we are not punching at our weight in terms of the attraction of foreign direct investment. We rank up in the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of a whole bunch of quality of life business destinations, but we're down like 17th or 20th when it comes to attracting new investment into the region. And again, if we're going to keep that economic engine going here for the rest of the country, we need to make sure that we are attracting and building the kind of jobs of the future that we need. And this agency is going to be really driving that.
Let me follow up with you on that. We have heard now the cry from many of you that Toronto needs more levers to do its thing, that property taxes aren't going to realize enough revenue to pay for all the things that the people in this city say they want. So like what? Throw some ideas on the table.
Well, let's go back to the City of Toronto Act from 2006. It was designed by some brilliant bureaucrats who worked really hard on it to give the City of Toronto broad authority to manage its fiscal affairs. But there's a whole bunch of footnotes at the bottom. That's like saying, let's agree curfew's 11. And then you go to head out at 11 and they say, did I say 11? I meant 9:30. If you're going to create broad authorities to manage your fiscal affairs, you need to live by it.
Oh, and we should explain, that's why the Premier had to green light at the end of the day, the tolls.
There's a lot of stuff that the Ontario government still needs to green light. So I think this is not just about putting, you know, the external puzzle pieces of what the rules are, but then letting cities hold the pen in writing their own destiny.
Huda, do you think some people from outside of Canada could be put off by the American experience right now and end up coming here and helping us as opposed to them?
I think so. I think there's a lot of uncertainty when you travel to the U.S., even if you don't hold a passport from one of those 7 countries and you happen to be Muslim, and if you look Muslim, that's worse for you. And there's just no certainty that you'll be let in or you'll be treated in a way that you would think. A country that touts freedom as the core of its building. And I think, sure, people might come to Canada, but this is not new. Canada has always stood for diversity. So I think it shines more of a light on us, but I wouldn't say that it's because of the US. We have always been here doing this diverse, innovative thing, and it just so happens that people are starting to notice because the competition is so much, I think, messing up.
Can I ask you a bit of a personal question?
Sure.
Would you go to the States right now?
I would not. I've actually, we were planning on pursuing a business client down in New York, and we've held off on that.
Because?
Because of the uncertainty and the instability in the country right now. I would have to go as the CEO of my company, and I don't know that I would be let past the border.
So you would be concerned about actually getting to that border and being turned back?
Definitely.
Because of?
Because I look visibly Muslim. And even though I don't belong to those 7 countries that were banned,
yeah, Saudi Arabia is not on the list.
That's right, surprisingly so. I would still be concerned because there's a Canadian woman from Quebec who was turned away with a Canadian passport. I don't know that I would feel safer with the Saudi one.
Do you have any concerns about traveling to the United States right now?
Absolutely. Not for my staff at the moment, but I have just heard yesterday from another CEO. He has a data scientist, PhD in data science, born and raised in Syria. And these CEOs simply cannot send this data scientist to the US anymore. And he has a big business in the US, and it's causing huge problem for him. And I don't believe he's alone. It's just sooner or later it will impact me, and I'm sure impact the rest of us as well.
Can Canada, I mean, this is a bit of an odd way to put it, but can Canada, from an economic standpoint, Michael, take advantage of the fact that these problems seem to exist?
Absolutely. I think right now we've seen an unprecedented level of chaos in the administration south of the border, and that breeds uncertainty. And it's not just this current travel ban, it's NAFTA, it's an H-1B visa pullback, other specific, industry, like healthcare industry changes.
Let me just stop you for a sec. H-1B refers to, what kind of a visa is that?
It's a visa that allows management or specialized talent under NAFTA to enter and work in the U.S.
Gotcha. Well, they even pulled the Nexus card off for a while, right? And they even were starting to have second thoughts about allowing people with Nexus cards to go through.
So if you think of all that uncertainty, from a business standpoint, where do you invest? Knowing, and especially as a startup where you're on the clock, right? It's a competitive sport. There's only a couple guys on the podium. No one remembers number 3. You've got a limited amount of time to make something happen, and you've just now entered a world where the ground is shaky. So can we capitalize on it? Should we capitalize on it? Absolutely.
Having said that, Nicole, I mean, it's still fair to say everybody still wants to make it big in the U.S., right? And therefore, I mean, this may be a bump in the road, but this is not going to change people's minds forever about where they truly want to make their money. Is that fair to say?
Well, here's the reality about being a Canadian company. It's the Shania Twain effect, where you have to make it in New York before you make it here. And so we have fundamentally have to make it through exports as well as selling in our own country. Our market's pretty small, and we have to be good at exporting, and that's a big strength of ours. So I think the approach that we should take when we have these conversations is to show the positivity. I'm glad the letter said this is our strength, as opposed to saying that's your weakness. I think we need to keep pushing that. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these things come down to culture. And it's culture within a startup, it's culture within a country, and it's culture within the country's approach to its startup community and innovation and technology. And then the other point is people always think about technology as just software, going to buy software. That's what everyone always thinks about, or hardware. But we really need to think about it as the key competitive advantage in all of our sectors. I mean, we sell to oil and gas, to aerospace, to defense. We need to think about it as an advantage in all of our exports. So I think that's important too. But you're right, we have to sell to the US. We have to sell all over the world. And I think Canada is well positioned to kind of be that bridge from the United States to Europe and to the rest of the world. So I think we have a real advantage here. It's exciting.
At the risk of all sounding a bit like we're holding hands and singing Kumbaya here, let's put some other numbers on the table, Sheldon, shall we? To look at the diversity within your industry, and here are some of the numbers. This, according to the Information and Communications Technology Council, ICT. In 2001, admittedly going far back, 28% of ICT's workers were born outside of Canada. In 2015, it was 37%. This according to StatsCan now. In 1987, 20% of the science, technology, engineering, and math, the so-called STEM workforce, was female. In 2014, all those years later, it's now a whopping 22%. Okay, those are the numbers, Huda. In your experience, does working in the Canadian tech industry live up to the values of diversity and inclusion that we've been talking about here tonight?
I think we have so much work to do.
Sounds like it.
So much work. I think it's coming together, but we shouldn't be patting ourselves on the back.
Does it seem like 25 years ago?
Some days it does, but those days are infrequent. It does feel like it's 5 years ago. It just feels very, very fresh. I guess because I talk about it all the time, but it really was quite an extraordinary event.
I read that liftoff on that day was delayed by an hour. And considering that the Challenger accident was in recent memory, how were you feeling before you boarded?
Well, early in the morning, because they got us up pretty early to fly, I realized I hadn't left much of a voice message for my mother. So I decided I would tape a little cassette for her and just say, you know, if anything happens to me, Mom, and I'd have to turn the thing off, and I was crying, and I'd turn it back on, and I'd do a few more seconds, and I'd turn it off again. So I think right before the flight, I kind of purged all of that terrible emotion that some of us have when we have knots in our stomach. And it just lasted just for maybe the whole time I did the tape. After that, I was fine. And when we went out to the launch pad, it was obvious that we were professionals going to do our job, but also we were quite exuberant and happy to be doing something that is kind of an unusual thing to do. So we were well prepared, optimized for the flight at that moment. So it was, we were feeling pretty confident about the roles that we could play.
I want to play a little bit of the takeoff right now.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. We have 3 main engines up and running. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery and the first International Microgravity Laboratory.
And as you were taking off, what was going through your mind?
Well, we had a couple of checklists in case there was a repeat of the Challenger accident. So for 2 minutes and 6 seconds when the solid rockets are on, kind of living a bit of tension there, wondering if we're going to get through it. And as soon as they say go for throttle up, that's the moment of truth. That's what the Challenger accident was all about. So we had to really concentrate on what would happen if we had a repeat of the Challenger current. There's nothing we could have done except just try to get out the side hatch door if it's separated from the main shuttle. So it's that kind of safety thing we were thinking about.
But once you're on there, I guess you're resigned to whatever happens.
Yes, there's a range safety officer with a hand right over an explosive button and said, you know, we'll blow you up if you start going asymmetrical or it doesn't look like you're flying right. We'll just say, that's goodbye crew. So we live with that, train knowing that might happen, hoping that doesn't, obviously. But it's always to be very, very focused on that moment, be very professional about what it is that you can or can't do. We've trained the best we can. And of course, you can't train totally for an explosion, but we train for bits and pieces that might save 1 life or 2 life.
So at no point did you have a thought like, oh, wow, what did I get myself into?
No, I think that happened a lot earlier.
What was it like once you reached orbit?
It's quite amazing. I don't think people realize that the last 45 seconds are really the hardest, or they were the hardest for the space shuttle, because it's the equivalent of having 3 times your body weight sitting in your chest and trying to breathe. So basically you're panting for 45 seconds. It's very uncomfortable. And then suddenly when the main engines cut out, it's like the brakes went on. But then when people drive a car and the brakes go on, they feel like they're going to go forward. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like that, except you kind of float forward and you don't come back again until you come back into Earth's atmosphere and back into the gravitational pull of the planet.
How often do you think about your time in space? I know you do a lot of talks and stuff, but how often, like on your own personal time, do you think about it?
I think about it a fair bit because it has affected the way I view the world around me.
How so?
I look at the Earth really differently now. I looked at it in space, I think, with a new eye. I wanted to. And I'm maturing in that view. Even though I'm not in space to see it, I carry with me that reality check that the Earth is a planet and we have finite resources. It's a most amazing thing if one can keep that kind of vision alive and evolve with it.
Maybe it feels like everybody should have the opportunity to go into space to maybe take better care of the planet.
I think people with level heads should, yes. I mean, there are people who'd probably see it and say, oh, wow, look what we've got here. We've got to take the whole thing over. Yeah. But I think you're right. I mean, if most people could really, really, really look at the Earth in its isolation, I think people would probably, at least for a while, be much more committed to try to deal with what we have here.
Is there a moment from your 8 days up there that has stuck with you?
I always feel that being at the top of Lake Winnipeg and looking across and seeing Lake Superior and then my hometown of Sault Ste. Marie and hearing the national anthem, that has to be one of the biggest highlights of my life. To see the country and to see where I was from and know that people were there trying to reach up to me with their thoughts and their blessings and the goodwill. And I think it's the goodwill of people and the goodness of people that I missed being able to see, and I had to imagine through my emotions about feeling them, but seeing that across the country and having that as a visual memory was very, very important to me.
Obviously, Canadians are very, very proud of you and of your achievement, but I'm thinking for the people from your hometown, it's a much bigger thing for them. It's extra special. What did it mean for you coming from the Soo to achieve this incredible feat?
I was very lucky that my parents were born in Sault Ste. Marie and lived their whole lives in the Soo, because it's a place that's situated so much on the water. It has the land. It just takes, within minutes, you're in the natural environment of our country. To be from that and have those traditional values that I had growing up, to be able to be in volunteer groups, to have all the kinds of beautiful community spirit that was there and still is, I think it allowed me to really represent those kinds of values that I believe that a lot of Canadians share. It's the one thing that I felt that I could take with me in space, was to be able to be a true Canadian. And I think being from that particular place, that community, really, I feel, reflects on a lot of our values that we have as Canadians.
And for your professional work, you were the first neurologist to travel to space. What did that mean for your work?
A lot of the experiments that we were doing on my particular space flight dealt with how the human body adapts to space flight and then readapts to Earth's gravitational field. And for something like 10 years afterwards, I headed an international space medicine research team looking at various aspects of space flight and how we could look at some of the things we were developing to try to make life better here on Earth, whether it's with people with Parkinson's disease or spinal cord injuries. So I felt a very deep connection with my specialty and my subspecialty of neuro-ophthalmology with the space program. And because I was able to do the experiments in flight and report back to my community of neurologists, I felt that we strengthened some of the research ties that we have between terrestrial-based medicine and space medicine.
What is it about space that interests you?
I think it's the unknown, not knowing what's out there, and then also the opportunity to see Earth from a different perspective and what that different perspective can bring to affecting our lives here on Earth in a more positive way.
Now, getting your internship at NASA was quite challenging. You didn't give up. How did that internship come about?
So it was a space exploration scholarship through the Canadian Space Agency, and they send one Canadian student down to NASA to intern for a summer. And I ended up applying for it 4 times, was rejected all 4 times that I applied, and was so frustrated after that 4th rejection that I decided just to call the chief of the Office of Higher Education at NASA myself, just to get feedback on my application, find out what I could be doing to get more aerospace experience. And then on that phone call, I ended up getting offered the internship position.
Were you shocked? Were you surprised?
I was definitely shocked. I thought I was going to get a voicemail, so I had my whole little bit rehearsed of what I was going to say. When that conversation ended, I was also told I had to find $10,000 to cover the program fee. So it was even more to persevere and get through after getting that position.
But had you not called and had you taken no for an answer,
it wouldn't have happened. And it was one of the most rewarding summers of my life, being surrounded by people working on actual stuff that's in space now.
Now, you've said before that you didn't like talking about that particular story, but now you do. Why is it important to share stories about failure?
I think often we don't always hear about the stories about people failing, especially in social media, Twitter, Instagram. Lots of times people put their perfect selves forward, talking about only their successes and what they've accomplished, and the real world's not like that. We often fail, things never go according to plan, and we have to learn how to improvise and get past those obstacles. And I think that's really important for young people to hear. The first time I told that story to an all-girls school, they said that they probably wouldn't even have tried a second time if they got rejected. So to hear someone saying that it took 4 times and it wasn't even on the 4th time that they made it kind of resonates and maybe triggers to them that it's okay to be rejected and fail on your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th time.
Now, when you hear someone say that, do you wonder what pushed you to apply 4 times and also to take the initiative of calling and to try to find out why? What is it about you?
I think I just didn't want to live with any regrets. I thought after I had applied those 4 times and got rejected, whoever was rejecting me on the other end probably hasn't given me a second thought to this day or wondered what I'm doing. But I have to live with the knowledge of whether I've done everything I possibly can to achieve my goals.
What are some of the projects that you're working on now?
So right now I'm on a Mars rover program. So the European Space Agency is sending a rover to Mars in 2020, and we're building the chassis and locomotion system. So that's basically the base structure of the rover with the legs and the wheels that allows it to drive around on the planet and steer.
That is so cool. I wanted to talk more about what's happening in STEM. Take a look at some numbers and some percentages. So women account for 39% of STEM graduates, which isn't bad, but it's not great when you compare that to graduates of all other degrees where women account for 66%. When it comes to actually working in STEM fields, women only make up 22% of the workforce. We've also got a graph comparing how much men and women in STEM careers make. Women are in red, men are in blue, and these numbers are from 2010, the latest year available. Do you have any theories on why this continues to be a problem?
I think it's definitely a complicated question. You'll see the stats that you read there about how some universities have record enrollment of women going into engineering and the sciences, and I think that's great, but you need to look at it with a wider lens. So it's about inspiring the young women to go into the careers in the first place, getting them to go into the degree and then graduate, and then once they're in the workforce, keeping them in the workforce, moving them up to director level, board level, and management positions. And somewhere along the way, there's that leaky pipeline where you're losing women in the field after they've graduated with their degrees. And I think a lot of it's almost a death by 1,000 cuts, all those little things of having to work twice as hard to get half as far that just add up and take its toll over time.
The Oscars have finally made themselves somewhat more inclusive, and we should say that Oscars So White was started by activist April O'Rein, and 2 Oscar Best Picture nominees tell stories about Black men. Can you tell us about Moonlight?
Moonlight is a beautiful story of a man discovering his sexual identity. He's played by 3 different actors at 3 stages of the man's life. As a boy, first of all, where he's bullied. As a teenager, where it gets worse. But he discovers a kind of burgeoning sexuality and his attraction to other men. And then finally, as a grown man, where he has a full identity, but it's in secret, it's compromised by homophobia all around him. And it's directed by Barry Jenkins.
And can you tell us about Fences?
Fences is based on the August Wilson play. This is the story that's set in the 1950s in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The story of a man who works on a garbage truck in Pittsburgh, but he had a career that he was dreaming about as a baseball player. That never worked out because of the racist sports leagues at the time. And he dominates his family. His wife, he's played by Denzel Washington. His wife is played by Viola Davis, and his sons as well. Terrific play has been done all around the world, and Denzel Washington and Viola Davis played this on Broadway, and now they've brought it to film.
Maurice, I want to bring you into this. What do these movies say about Black men that we haven't heard before?
You know, I wish there was something unique that they would bring to the experience. I think it's just important, as Viola said, that we're, for example, in Fences, talking about the average Black male experiences, not the extraordinary, not the unique. Just this is what it means to be an average Black man, because we portray average white men very often in movies. But it's always something unique about a Black man that brings the, you know, a movie or a script to the person.
In the past, what have we seen as far as it being unique?
Well, I mean, I like Moonlight, for example, but there is an issue around his homophobia and the homosexuality. You know, the images that I have seen of Black men have always been, well, you have to be exceptional for Hollywood to take notice of you. I think that Fences breaks that stereotype, and I think that's wonderful.
And Wesley, what do you think?
I saw Moonlight. I really liked it because I think what it did was put out a narrative for people who are coming to terms with their sexual orientation and their identity as young Black youth, to look up to something that represents their everyday struggles, their everyday narratives. And I think that the beauty of it was that 3 different actors represented different stages in a Black man's life, which was really well done. And I think in that sense, it captured the struggles of everyday homophobia within the Black community. But it also showed you how hypermasculinity in particular can be used as a facade that not only represents heterosexism, but represents hypermasculinity in the context of being gay and lesbian, etc.
Because as we see Chiron growing up, he becomes this,
very
he embodies this,
hypermasculine,
hypermasculine. And Mark, what do you think?
Well, I liked the range that we were able to see in Moonlight, right? We saw, of all the characters, we saw a range of Black masculinities, and I thought that was humanizing, in that we can see the stereotype that we often see of the drug dealer, but we can also see a humanized side of him. We can see a young boy moving through his life and coming to terms with his identity and growing his identity, actually being an agent, being active in taking information in and trying to shape who he's going to be, whether that's protecting his desires and his actual orientation or protecting his body. But there's a way in which we can read Black masculinity in a much wider range or scope in that one film.
Jonathan?
I loved both films. I loved Moonlight, loved Fences. I watched them both last night for the first time. I waited a while to screen them, and there wasn't a sense of urgency, and I was talking to Mark about it earlier. For me, it almost seemed too soon or too close to home.
Which one, Fences or Moonlight?
Both. Both. You know, they should have a trigger warning for if you're a Black male, because it is our story, and because we've lived it, we're not rushing to see it again on TV because it is so traumatic, and does reopen wounds that you've just begun to heal. But they were beautifully done, and I'm so glad I saw them, because the buzz is, you can't go anywhere without hearing about Moonlight or Fences, and the performances are amazing by all of the actors in the films. I'm grateful that these films are now having wide theatrical releases, and people are getting a chance to see them that wouldn't have a chance to see them, or wouldn't want to see them, because it doesn't really affect their circle, because it does create that conversation and that dialogue that's been needed to be said, I think, for a very long time.
Cameron, why do you think these movies got so much attention this year?
It took a while for them to get so much attention. I remember we showed Moonlight at the Toronto Film Festival, and there were some people who knew Barry Jenkins's work and were excited to see the film, but a lot of people didn't know about it at all. And then we were able to have the film in our Lightbox cinema from about November, and it was a slow burn. Initially, there were some people who found out about it through their own channels. They follow movies, they're cinephiles. But for a long time, you'd ask people, do you know about this movie Moonlight? You got to see Moonlight. And they'd be like, what's Moonlight? Now everybody knows about Moonlight. Of course, it has been picking up awards in North America and all over the world. And I think the thing about, it's too close to home, I think that's part of it as well. Certainly among the Black community, some people felt like, I don't need to see Moonlight, I don't need to see Fences, I live this world. And that to me speaks to a very important point, which is what you were saying earlier, we don't see our ordinary lives on screen very often. We're used to the lives of ordinary people being white people because Hollywood gives us that. Fact is, 1 out of every 8 people in America is an African American, but is 1 out of every 8 movies about an African American as an ordinary person? Absolutely not. When I was studying in school, I studied Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman over and over and over again. The American everyman, right? But the character that Denzel Washington plays in Fences is also the American everyman. And it's taken us a while to come around to that, to see these stories as ordinary stories.
That is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those conversations in full at tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda. And now, thanks to our nightly Twitter live stream on our Periscope page at periscope.tv/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.